We recognize there's more to do, and we will be there to do it because we are the ones who are taking seriously Canada's defence needs and making sure the women and men of our armed forces have the right equipment, not just to fulfill what their fellow Canadians expect of them, but what our allies around the world are counting on us to do.
The Prime Minister responding on Friday to a letter sent to him by 23 U.S. senators. The group of bipartisan lawmakers are calling on Canada to increase its defence spending to meet its 2% NATO target. The sharply worded letter says the senators are concerned and disappointed, saying Canada will fail to meet its obligations to the detriment of all NATO allies and the free world. Earlier, I spoke with one of the senators behind that letter, Republican Kevin Cramer. Senator Kevin Cramer, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Look forward to it. Thank you.
You, along with 22 other bipartisan U.S. senators, I should say, so Republican and Democrat, signed this letter to the Prime Minister, encouraging him, urging him to meet the NATO spending target. Why did you feel the need to send this letter, Senator?
Well, first of all, because the United States is going to be hosting the annual NATO summit this year, and we'd sure like to have our closest neighbor and closest friend, step up a little bit. Canada, as you probably know, frankly, there are very few countries in NATO that are doing less in terms of a percentage of their GDP than Canada, and we'd like to get that number higher. The other thing is that we need Canada to step up in a bigger way. When I say we, the United States, the free world, the North Atlantic Alliance needs everybody to step up a little more, but Canada's got a long ways to go to get to 2%. We, of course, as a country, have a very close relationship, security relationship with Canada, in addition to NATO, with NORAD, the North American Aerospace Alliance as well. So we just need to get everybody on board and get everybody up to speed on what it takes to secure freedom in this very, very dangerous world right now.
Well, I'm sure you know that in the last budget, there was first a defense policy review here, and then there was the decision to invest a lot more in defense than had been done, getting Canada up to $1.76 billion, not right away, over a number of years. Was that is that encouraging to you? Is that's still not obviously not the target, but he says the minister says he expects to reach it fairly soon. So what did you make of those investments?
Well, first of all, I always like anything where the trajectory is going in the right direction.
Sure.
That said, you mentioned the targets. There are benchmarks and targets. What I'd like to see from Canada is, by the time the summit comes around, is that we have a better sense of what the benchmarks are, what the targets are that get to 2% of GDP. The United States is at 3.5%, and Canada is at like 1.4%. So I'd like to see those targets and see if we can't get there by 2030. That's, in my mind, a fairly modest target, but we want to be helpful, but we need Canada to be helpful as well.
Yeah, one of the things, and perhaps this is what you want to hear more about, one of the things that Minister Blair said yesterday when he was faced with a lot of questions about this letter is that they are doing work right now to see what further investments need to be made, whether it be buying submarines, air missile defense systems, that those things are still to come and will be part of the ongoing work. So are you saying, okay, you're on track to get the 1.7 by, I believe it's 2029, but what else are these other purchases that you're going to make, will that get you to the 2%? Is that what you want to know?
Yeah, I do. I would like to know more of that. It's not too soon to prepare. As you know, these weapons systems, whether they're fighter jets or submarines or surface vessels, they're expensive, they're highly technical, and they take a long time to roll out. I would like to see, as much as anything, an even closer relationship in terms of what is necessary, so that the great strength of Canada and the United States, the entire NATO alliance, and frankly others, is that we have alliances, that we don't go it alone. What's concerning, however, is that you're seeing our adversaries, who used to be adversaries with one another, forming alliances based on their opposition to us. So whether it's Russia, China, North Korea, Iran. So we need to beef up the alliance, and we need to continue to be both a deterrent and then a capable war-fighting alliance that can defend freedom, whether it's somewhere else or here. I just think we ought to be working closer together. That's why, for example, the AUKUS program designed to build more Virginia-class submarines. It's an alliance between Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. I think we need to do more of that with more of our weapons systems so that we're not just simply aggregating, but that we do something that, when we're doing it together in a more dynamic way, that enjoys where, situations where 1 + 1 = more than 2.
Right.
And so perhaps that's the real answer, is to be working together on the planning as well as just, not just the numbers.
The U.S. ambassador to Canada, David Cohen, he has previously been very critical of Canada for not hitting that target. But when he saw the budget, he changed his tune to some degree. He said he was very pleased with, as you said, the trajectory it shows. Do you think that the administration is sending the right messages to Canada about how important it is to get to that target sooner rather than later, given all the things that you just said?
Well, personally, I think that our administration and Canada's administration both project weakness too much, to be honest. I think, but in terms of, is our administration projecting enough strength or enough urging, if you will, to Canada to step it up? Probably not. I think we have to, first of all, demonstrate, our commitment, and we are at 3.5%. But we also can be doing a better job of projecting strength in not just rhetoric, but in how we're treating our other allies, particularly Ukraine, Israel, obviously Taiwan. And when it comes to the Pacific, when it comes to all of those adversaries, Canada is as vulnerable as we are, and in fact, in many cases, because of the Arctic and the importance of the Arctic, even more important. So, no, I think we have to be firm friends, shall we say, with one another, and everybody step up. Right now, the United States, we're looking at a budget increase in our military for 2025 of only 1%, which, as you know, with 4% inflation, is a 3% cut. That's not adequate either. And so many of us on both sides of the political aisle are urging our administration. In fact, we'll be marking up a bill in a couple of weeks in the Armed Services Committee that I sit on, the NDAA, where we're working really hard to raise that top line number.
Tell me, do you, because I have heard this from Americans before, do you feel like Canada takes advantage of the enormous amount of spending that you guys do in your defense sphere, and for that reason doesn't feel the pressure to get to that target, because we know who our neighbor is and we know if something were to happen, you guys would be there. Do you think that there's some of that factors into this?
Well, I try not to be quite that cynical, even if I'm thinking it. But that said, I don't want to say that they take advantage. They may take it for granted a little bit too much. But that's as much on us as it is on them, right? So this is where I think our administrations, our parliaments, if you will, the Congress of the United States and the Parliament, this is exactly why Angus King, my friend Angus King, and I started the ACES caucus. We founded the American-Canadian Economic Security Caucus just last year. Had a wonderful kickoff reception on the top of the Canadian Embassy, some of the best real estate in Washington, D.C., with Ambassador Hillman, and just really, really, we need to focus more on that, and we look forward to working together throughout the process. Again, not just the aggregating of dollars, but a strategy as well. Do they take advantage of us? I don't know about that, but we're happy to provide an advantage. It's just that we need Canada to join us at a higher level in that effort.
Let me just end on this, though. I'm sure the Prime Minister has seen the letter by now, but what would be your message to him over these next couple of months leading up to the NATO meeting? Obviously, they're not going to change the number now, but what do you want him to be thinking about after he sees that letter and heading towards that meeting?
Yeah, a couple of things. And one thing I would advise him, as I do to our own leaders, when you get a letter like that, and remember, this is not just bipartisan. This is from Ted Cruz on the far right to Jeff Merkley on the far left and everybody in between. So this is a very unified message. I want him to just not only take the letter seriously, but respond to it seriously. And I think how we communicate with one another is a good first step in how seriously we take one another. And this is a serious message. I would expect a serious response to that message. And then start laying out those things you and I talked about, the benchmarks, not just the trajectory, but how do we get to 2% by 2030, if that's possible? And if not, tell us how we could help make it possible.
Senator, nice of you to make the time. Always nice to speak with a U.S. Senator. Thanks so much.
Always my pleasure. Thank you.